You've got to be f***ing joking.
Some for me, some for me.
Hello, Johnny here, welcome back. In this video I'm going to cover finding, selecting and then finally purchasing a plot of land. So go through some of the thought processes and methodology that I used, the criteria that I had on the land that I wanted to buy, some of the tools that I found very useful, both on and off the internet, and then the whole process of actually being in the land office, parting with hard-earned cash, and finally driving up to very own piece of land. So before I start, just a quick one on foreigners' ownership of land in Thailand. Now with very few exceptions, a foreigner cannot own land. So I've been in Thailand now for about 9 years, getting on 10 years, and in Asia a little bit longer than that. I'm happily married for 5 years plus, been with the same lady for pretty much all the time I've been in Thailand. And I made the decision that I'm buying land in my wife's name. That comes with some pitfalls and some risks. It also comes with a lot less risks, I believe, in some of the alternatives. So I know many people have purchased land via starting or buying a company where they're a 49% shareholder and they have Thai nominees as the rest of the ownership of the company, typically where those Thai nominees have signed an undated letter of resignation. Now that didn't sit very well with me for lots of reasons, the main one being it's illegal, and it only takes a small issue, someone dobbing you in, a change of government, a change of circumstances, and you can potentially lose the lot. Certainly some recent news down in Phuket over the last couple of months with what foreigners have been doing has put the spotlight on us, and I'm sure there's some people with some, twitchy bums probably. So, on to finding land. And looking at my criteria for the land I wanted to purchase, and we were living initially just outside of Pattaya, so on the dark side, about 5 kilometers east or so of Pattaya. And after lots of rented houses, we finally found what we thought was the perfect house. So amazing size, it was about 550 square meters, I think, of living space on a plot that was just over 1,000 square meters. An amazing Muban. So great neighbours. The price was just about right. The house needed a bit of work, but that was reflected in the price, and it also made sure that I could afford it. We'd lived there for 4 years, and basically over time we fell out of love with Pattaya. So yeah, I hate cities. I hate the noise, the dust, the dirt, which is why I didn't live in central Pattaya itself. But the ever-rising prices, Pattaya's just getting so busy. So the amount of cars on the road, even in the low season. So a trip that might have taken 5 minutes before could take an hour sometimes. It was just absolutely crazy. And allied to that, I'm getting older. I'm in my early 50s, and always had the dream of owning my own plot of land. Well, buying a wife a plot of land, and building my dream house. So the criteria that I was using, I've listed here. So first of all, location. Pretty easy for me because I kind of want to be a little bit off the grid, but still have some comforts. So where I lived in Thailand didn't really matter to me. So my wife, if she wanted to move, she, for obvious reasons, wanted to be closer to her family, as she comes from Isan, so right up in the northeast of Thailand. I didn't want to be too close to the family for what are probably obvious reasons. But yeah, we could absolutely look everywhere. So we looked just north of Pattaya, we looked in the Chonburi area, we looked a bit south towards Rayong, we looked over towards Hua Hin, we looked at Karat, and then I started looking closer to her family, In fact, the plot that we bought is about 10 kilometers from most of her family, so I kind of, I kind of gave in on one of the points. But so yeah, location I was pretty easy just because I didn't really care. Price, again, for obvious reasons, I had a budget. I wanted to spend ideally in about the 3 million baht range, but I could go up to 5 if I absolutely had to. So do set yourself some budgets, because you're not just buying land, you'll suddenly find yourself, great, I've bought my perfect bit of land, but I've got no money left to do anything with it. I've just got this great big hunk of dirt. I could guess I could set up a tent, but it's no good fun. The size. So for me, when I was looking in the patio area, I was looking to start with about 1 rai. But where I was living, in the Muban I was living, some of the asking prices for 1 rai got up towards about 10 million baht, which is crazy. And the cheapest I could find for anything that was I thought had any value was 3, 4, 5 million baht for a single rai. Could go a little bit further afield and get down to the 3s, the 2s, if you were lucky. But then I started thinking, well, if I'm outside of a main city anyway, it doesn't matter whether I'm 10 miles out or 50 miles out, I can pretty much live anywhere. So I wanted to be within an hour of an airport, so I can still fly down to Bangkok pretty quickly. But yeah, it didn't really matter to me. So looking further afield, the prices drop significantly. So Pattaya is very expensive, probably not expensive as Bangkok, but too expensive for the size of land I wanted. And then I thought to myself, okay, so let's go on to point C now, size. Why go small? So I set myself an arbitrary size minimum of 6 rai. That was the size I wanted or bigger. There was no upper scale. People have commented to me, well, okay, 6 rai, how are you gonna mow the grass? How are you gonna plant the grass? Okay, well, yeah, good point, but what a fantastic problem to have. Shape. So point D, shape. You might not think this is important, but there's lots of land plots in Thailand that are really weird shapes, so you'll end up paying for land that you can't really use. So what I wanted was the squarest or the most rectangular plot of land possible. And on that, the size of the boundary was important to me. So I wanted to build a decent wall across the front of the property. And if you started getting into land that had a road boundary of 200, 300, 400 meters, that starts to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of baht just to build a cheap version of a wall. So again, I set myself an arbitrary limit of 100 meters maximum for the road frontage of the land I wanted to buy. As square as possible, as deep as possible to get the size up, didn't really matter, but I wanted the corners of the land to be as square as possible, so we could really maximize the use of the land. Found a few plots that matched most of the criteria, but were too thin. So some nice plots that were only maybe 30 or 40 meters wide. So I want to build a house, I also want to build a workshop, and I want them side by side. And I don't want them up to the boundaries, so when you've only got 30 or 40 meters of width to play with, yeah, you can't really do too much with that, in my point of view. Point E, elevation. So 2 sides to this. So one is, I want to make sure that the land doesn't get flooded. So talking to locals, Google Earth is a great tool for this. So while you're moving your mouse over Google Earth, certainly on the desktop version, probably on the web version as well, you can see the elevation above sea level. So check for things, scroll your mouse around. If you find a plot of land, start looking at the elevation of the land around it. So is your land lower? If you start getting huge land rainfall, is the rain going to come and flood your land? Also look if you're close to a river, how far above the river are you? If you're close to the sea, lucky you. How far above sea level are you going to be? And then also on elevation, the elevation above the road. So many people buy paddy fields, and paddy fields are typically low because they need lots of water. And you're going to need to fill that land. So if you're looking at a sizable plot of land and you're 1 meter, 2 meters below the road level, now you don't, well, I don't want to build a house that's lower than the road. I want my driveway that comes from the road up to the house to actually rise slightly. So yeah, elevation, you can't really tell that from Google Earth. You can only really tell that by looking at the plot itself. So Google Earth can be a little bit misleading when you start, even when you go into Street View, you're trying to gauge how low the land is compared to the road. You can't really tell that with Google Earth. In fact, one of the plots of land I'll come on to just shortly taught me that lesson very well. And then finally, facilities. So a whole host of things here. I do want to be off-grid at some point, so I'm going to go solar, but it's always nice to have electrical backup. And just with some of the plans that I have, so some of the tools I want to run, some woodworking or metalworking machinery, I want 3-phase. So how close is electricity to where I'm going to be? You can start paying an awful lot of money very quickly if you need to start running new electric lines 200, 300, 400 meters from the closest existing lines or the existing substation. So having electricity just outside would be an absolute bonus. And again, with Street View on Google Earth, you can start looking at plots of land, and you can see the power poles and you can count the cables. So there's a couple of plots of land I saw, and I could easily see on Street View that they couldn't provide 3-phase power easily. Again, that wouldn't be a killer for me, but 3-phase power would be a nice to have. Water. Again, this one, not a killer for me at all, because we absolutely plan on drilling a well. But it would be nice to have backup water from the city if available. Certainly when you're, and in fact it's the same for electricity, so when you're buying an empty plot of land and you want to build, there are 2 things you absolutely will need during construction, that is electricity and water. So can you get a temporary meter from PEA? Can you have a well? Can you have access to water that already exists? That will really help you on your construction. Access. So access here, what I mean by here is how close to a road am I? And what kind of road is it? So for me, I've seen some great plots of land that you just couldn't get to. So they're not great plots of land. So my ideal was I wanted to be on a concrete road, and ideally at least 4 or 5 meters wide, just for access for construction machinery, my own cars and other bits and pieces I wanted to buy. I also didn't want to be on a dirt road or a red clay road, just because I don't want to be cleaning cars all the time. So again, plot of land, 100 meters wide, maximum frontage, on a concrete road, with electricity ideally, with water access ideally, and then finally amenities. So by this, how close am I to schools for the kids? How far do I have to drive or ride to get to the closest 7-Eleven? Is there anything else available to me that I might miss that's close enough to the land that I can get to? Can I get within, or am I an hour or less away from an airport? How far away is the local macro? And the same with DIY shops such as Thai What To Do or Global House. How quickly can I get to one? Because I'm always going to be buying bits and pieces, and certainly while we are planning and then building a house, I'm going to be there backwards and forwards all the time. So the closest I am to one will just make it much easier. What tools did I use? I started off, as you probably would, just looking for agents on the internet. One of the major ones in Thailand is DD Property. It was semi-useful. I tended to find that the prices were right up there. And lots of agents just, they want to attract you in, so they'll keep plots of land that were sold months or sometimes years ago on their site, and you end up maybe making an inquiry and the land's no longer available, which I find really annoying. So the next thing I used was Facebook Marketplace. Load up Facebook, click on Marketplace, and here you are. So I've just literally typed in land for sale. I've set a location just roughly where I might want to be, and a radius. So I've put a huge radius here of 250 kilometers, and just start scrolling down. 9 baht there probably means 9 rai or 9 million or 900,000. Here's one lovely river view here. Be aware that sometimes you'll see a plot of land. I think this says just over 4 rai. And 32 square meters, but the price is misleading because that 2.5 million, which is far too much for me, is per rai. So that plot there is over 10 million baht asking price. Lovely plot, way overpriced for me. Scroll down for some more. There's a 1 baht plot here apparently. Here's an interesting point. Sometimes you'll see plots of land posted by an agent, and the agent isn't the person that owns the land. But when you go into some of the photos, or if you can find the place on Google Earth just by doing some land matching, you'll often find a for sale sign that's got the real owner's phone number on it. And here's an example of that. What's this? Just over 1 rai, 1.2 million baht. So this plot for me, way overpriced. In fact, they want to split it into three separate plots. No, absolutely not for me. And it's also on a dirt road. No good. Looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. I can't see any electricity poles there. Didn't meet almost any of my criteria and was overpriced for what I was looking for. Now, another thing to be aware of, regardless of where you're trying to find your land, is sometimes you'll just find somewhere that just looks too good to be true. The price doesn't match. I've seen some places, particularly on Marketplace, where the land area was shown as like 30, 40, 50 rai, and a price in the tens of thousands of baht per rai, rather than the hundreds of thousands or even the millions. And what that typically means is it's not a real title on that land. It could well be that someone has rights to use the land but doesn't have full ownership, but they're still trying to sell on that right of ownership, which more often than not is not allowed, certainly not to a foreigner. So just be aware, if it looks too good to be true, like pretty much every time, it probably is.
Here's a good example of a weird shape of a plot of land. So I was looking for a rectangular plot of land. This is about as far from it as you can get. It also looks like the access is, I'm guessing, very difficult. Where's the road? How do I get to that bit of land? Not a chance that I'm going to look for that. That 10 beds, 10 bathrooms, that probably means 10 rai as well. And there's a good chance that that 1.9 million baht is, again, 1.9 million baht per rai.
Marketplace did give me maybe 4 or 5 leads, some of which we visited. However, what I found absolutely invaluable was having my sister-in-law close to an area that maybe we wanted to buy some land in. So we had her scoping some of the plots that we had seen on Marketplace or other places, just to make sure that there was nothing absolutely untoward about the plot we were looking at. So didn't want to waste our time. And also she basically told us that every small village has got 1 or 2 side hustle agents there. So we found there was a lady, in fact, who lives just down the road from the plot of land that we did end up buying, who pretty much knew every plot of land for sale within a mile's radius. And that was a lead that we did end up taking. And I'll come onto that just a little bit later.
Lands maps. So if you don't know this site already, you're going to love it. I'll leave the link in the description below. So this is a site provided by the Thai government that's based on Google Earth. So you can zoom about, find where you want to start looking for a plot of land, and then start double clicking, and it will show you the land boundaries, the land size, often the government's valuation of the land itself. So that is just land, it doesn't include any buildings on the land. Let's just find where I used to live. Here we go. Double click here. So this is telling me lots of information. You can see there the government thinks it's 20,000 baht per square wa. So a square wa is the smallest unit of measurement pretty much on these. It's 4 square meters. Then you've got an ngang. I can't pronounce in Thai, so I'll call it what it looks like. An ngang is 100 square wa. So this plot here is 2 lots of 100 square wa, so 264 square wa. Multiply that by 4 and you get just over 1,000 square meters of size. So they are saying it's 20,000 baht per square wa. So that's 264 times 2,000. So getting towards roughly 5 million for that plot of land. You probably wouldn't be able to buy that plot of land for 5 million, just to be aware. But that gives you an indication. That doesn't include the house. So that house actually sold for the 13 million baht range just before we bought the land where we are now. This is another plot that I was looking at buying just outside where I used to live. So 14 rai, almost 15 rai in fact, 7,550 baht per talang wa. That is one expensive plot of land, tens and tens of millions of baht, just on the government valuation, let alone what the actual owners would want to to have. Now I'm zooming in on a place that we saw in Marketplace. I think this was 15, 16, 17 Rai. That is next door at 19 Rai. So this plot of land that we were looking at, it wasn't square. It had and you can see like a concrete irrigation a channel running through the land, so it kind of split the land in half. It's got loads of trees, so deforesting that land to build anything on it would take absolutely ages. The main thing though is we started asking neighbours, so we sent out the sister-in-law to go and have a look around. Next door to the plot of land is a pig farm. They told us it was no longer used, but a pig farm it is, and there's every chance that a foreigner starts buying that land, and as soon as you know, you've got noisy pigs next door. Here's another plot that we found. This was actually advertised both on an agent that we saw and on Facebook Marketplace. So the size, amazing for us. 15 Rai, almost 16 Rai in fact. Cheap. I think the asking price was in the region of 3.5 million baht. We did start talking to the owner. We got copies of the Shanot sent to us. That's a good idea. And we kind of knocked them down to about 2.8 million, I think it was. We had the sister-in-law going there. She turned her nose up at it just because she took a wrong turning to get there. She didn't realise that if she had gone the opposite way, that there was a concrete road that land was sat on. So that was probably the first piece of land that we said, okay, we're absolutely going to look at that land because it looks like it's perfect for us. You can see the size. There's like a little bulge in the middle. I could ignore that, but it was rectangular. The roadside boundary was 75 meters, I think. So it was about 75 meters by 330 meters. Great for a golf driving range. Click on a few other places. Occasionally there's no data, but most of the time there is. There's a 5 Rai plot, 200 baht per Talangwa, apparently. How do you get to that plot of land? You can't. This site also lets you do, I think it's something like 16 or 20 clicks a day, so you can start looking at 16 or 20 or so pieces of land. Don't do this because it's naughty, but if you delete your cookies, you are suddenly back on the page as if you'd never been there before. Need to click the English link again. And then you can start zooming in, looking at land, off you go. Now, I was very often looking for land or finding land in Marketplace or wherever, looking for it on Google Earth based on photos. Sometimes you can see the location pretty well, sometimes you can't. But with a bit of investigation, you can find where that land is on Google Earth, and then you can kind of trace that location back over to Lands Map, so you can start zooming in, seeing the borders, seeing what the local land office values the land at. Together, a really, really useful tool. I must have spent tens of hours on that site and cross-checking between Google. A really, really invaluable source of information. And then finally, in terms of the tools that I used significantly, of course, is Google Earth. So I'm just going to scroll into the area where we were looking for land earlier, some of the sites that I showed you on Lands Maps. So this is the site here, if I can find it, there we go, that we found via an agent and also on Marketplace. So it's a bit of a weird shape, and it's got the irrigation canal cut through the middle of it, and the pig farm next door. Go to Street View. So you can see the gate. In fact, you can see a phone number there. I think that might be the phone number that we actually contacted the direct owner for, so bypassing an agent and potentially skipping a commission there. You can see just how overgrown it is, so clearing that land to be able to build a sizable house on there would take some time, cost some money. And you can also see there on Street View that there was electricity running right past, but it only had 2 conductors, so I couldn't get my 3-phase power. That wouldn't be a killer, but it was nice. I can also measure the road. I think this is about 6 meters wide, this concrete road, so it's a very decent road to have your land fronting onto.
zoom back into pretty much the same area because I shouldn't have zoomed out in the first place. So let's go to the land where we did visit. And I'll tell you what I mean in terms of the elevation from the road. So I absolutely don't, for obvious reasons, don't buy a plot of land that you've not seen because there will be something that you didn't notice. So now that I look at it again, I can kind of see that what the issue was. But when I was looking at this land on Google Earth and on Street View here, it just looked perfect to me. I guess I should have known because it was a paddy field and there's a huge swathe of water there. I think this might have been updated since I first looked at it. I can measure that road as well. That road, it was a little bit more twisty than I expected, so getting some decent sized plant machinery in there would have been a bit of fun. Measuring it with Google Earth, a fantastic tool. I think it came out as about 3 meters, maybe just over about 3.5 meters. So that was a bit of a flag. However,
This is why it's a great idea to go and view your land before you buy it. So I get to the land and can you see the problem? There is a 2-meter drop from the road down to the land surface. Now it's a huge plot of land, so you could take dirt from the back of the land to pull it up to the front, but do you really want to do that? So you're going to end up landfilling that site. It's going to take you thousands of trucks and it's going to cost you probably into the millions of baht to get that land up to a decent elevation. Absolutely no. Anyway, this video is already way too long. I've got much more to show you. To be continued.